This happened just a few weeks ago. I needed a break. I thought getting away would help me clear my head. I was driving along those winding mountain roads, surrounded by tall pines and snow. It looked nice there, maybe too nice. I wasn't sure of the area, but the cabin I rented promised solitude. I settled in the first evening, feeling tired but relieved. The cabin was small, and the heater hummed quietly. It was a little neglected, but that wasn't so unusual. I did what most would do, unpacked my things, made a simple dinner, and got ready to relax. While I rummaged through a dusty drawer, I found an old map tucked away. It was yellowed and marked with strange symbols. I squinted at the cryptic notes. I thought, maybe I should check this out tomorrow. I woke up early, and the world outside seemed eerily quiet. Once I grabbed my coat and beanie, I headed out. The snow crunched under my boots. I followed the trail the map indicated, feeling excitement mixed with unease. As I walked, I saw weird footprints leading away from the main path. They didn't look like animal tracks. I tried to shake off that feeling, telling myself my mind was just playing tricks. As I went further, I heard scratching sounds from the trees. I froze. Maybe it was just branches moving in the wind, right? Still, my heart raced. I took a deep breath and kept going. But then I heard laughter. It was faint but clear, almost childlike. I wished I could say I imagined it. In those moments, I second-guessed myself. Was I being paranoid, or was something out there? Each night, back at the cabin, the rustling outside my door grew louder. I wanted to dismiss it, but I couldn't. I thought I saw shadows darting past my windows. I stayed up, peering through the glass, hands trembling. These strange occurrences had me on edge. The next morning, I thought about following another part of the trail. I recalled the map. I tried to reason with myself. Nothing was really wrong, right? But everything felt off. I stepped back outside, unsure. My foot landed on that same odd footprint, and my stomach dropped. Was I alone? Maybe it was just isolation playing tricks on me. But deep down, I felt I was being watched. Eventually, I found myself standing at the edge of the woods again. I stared into the trees, asking myself whether I should keep going or turn back. I don't know what compelled me, but I took a first step into the dark. Then I heard a voice whispering my name. I turned around. There was nobody behind me. What was happening? I felt paralyzed. I didn't understand what was real anymore. The laughter grew louder, echoing in my ears. I backed away slowly, heart racing. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer came. But that feeling, the discomfort, it stayed with me. Could I really leave this mystery behind? The moment I turned back toward the cabin, something caught my eye. A flicker of movement. My heart pounded. Was I seeing things? I squinted into the trees, but the shadows concealed all. I shook my head, thinking I needed to regain my sanity. Maybe I was just tired, too stressed out, or both. I hurried back to the cabin, breathing heavily. I slammed the door behind me and leaned against it, closing my eyes. The world outside felt too much, too intense. I made a cup of tea to calm myself down. As the warmth spread through my hands, I considered my options. I could drive back home, back to my normal life. Maybe I'd made a mistake coming out here. Then I thought of the map again. Its strange symbols were a mystery I felt compelled to unravel. Against my better judgment, I grabbed it, intending to examine it further. I spread it out on the small, worn table, trying to decipher its clues. There were markings that looked like landmarks, but what struck me were a series of X's scattered all over the page. It felt like a treasure map, but to what? I traced my finger over each X. I noticed one nearby that was quite close. An unease washed over me. Should I really go out there again? Part of me was terrified, but another part craved answers. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I took a deep breath and put on my coat again. I grabbed a flashlight, and with one last glance back at the cabin, I stepped outside. The cold air hit me, but I felt strangely resolute. The shadows of the trees loomed over me as I walked the same path I had taken before. I followed the trail according to the map, but this time every snap of a twig sent chills down my spine. I steered clear of the footprints, avoiding the sense of dread they had sparked in me earlier. Each step seemed to linger. I was acutely aware of the silence, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of wind. But the laughter I heard before, it wasn't present now. Then something changed. I spotted a faint glow in the distance. It flickered like a candle. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity dance within me. I moved cautiously toward that glow, heart racing at how similar this felt to a bad horror movie. But that feeling of being drawn in was irresistible. When I finally reached the source, I found a small clearing. In its center was a wooden post, weathered and aged with time. Attached to it was an old lantern, flickering weakly. But what made my blood run cold were the items scattered around the base. Children's toys, dolls with cracked faces, and faded photographs. That's when I saw it. A dark figure behind one of the trees, just out of the light. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to run, but the voice whispered again, this time louder, sharper. Stay. It had never felt this real. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, heart pounding against my chest. I had to get out of there. I had to leave. But the brush of cold fingers seemed to brush my arm. As darkness closed in around me, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I froze, the grip of cold tightening around my arm, just as dread washed over me. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but my body felt tethered to the ground. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see whatever had touched me, but the shadows swallowed the clarity of the figure behind the tree. "Who's there?" I tried to demand, though my voice wavered. No reply came, only that oppressive silence, suddenly heavier than it had been moments ago. With a surge of adrenaline, I tore away from the wooden post, not caring if I disturbed the eerie toys and dolls scattered around it. I sprinted back toward the trail, flashlight beam flickering wildly as I swung it from side to side. It felt as if the darkness was alive and watching. I pushed through the brush and stumbled onto the main path. The trees loomed like giants on either side, their branches reaching out as if to snag me, to pull me back into the shadows. But I didn't stop. My breath came in quick gasps, my heart racing harder with each step. The cabin loomed ahead, a beacon of safety I desperately needed. But just as I neared it, a cry pierced the stillness, a high, haunting wail. It stopped me dead in my tracks. I felt a sense of loss wash over me. It was the kind of sound that snatched at my heart and twisted it painfully. I hesitated, torn. Was I supposed to investigate? What if someone needed help? Every fiber of my being told me to run, but curiosity clawed at me. I took a hesitant step toward the sound, drawn back into the depths of the trees. As I did, I fished the map from my coat pocket again. The X closest to me glinted ominously under the pale moonlight. A sudden crack of a branch made me jump, and my flashlight died right then and there. Darkness enveloped me. Panic crashed over me like waves, and I scrambled in my coat, searching for my phone. With shaking hands, I turned it on. The dim light revealed nothing more than dense foliage. The world around felt thick, heavy, like the air was waiting. That's when I spotted it. Not far from where I had just been, a figure hung between the trees. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a trick of the light, but as the beam from my phone caught it, I felt the chill run down my spine again. It was a shape, a person, dressed in ragged clothing, staring right at me with hollow eyes. I stumbled backward, barely keeping my feet beneath me. My mind raced. Was this who had touched me? The thought filled me with dread. I turned and ran, not bothering to glance back. The cabin became my sole focus. As I reached the porch, I fumbled with the door, my hands shaking violently. I crashed inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, panting, desperate for safety. But my relief was fleeting. A soft knock echoed from outside, followed by that same voice, now a whisper that seemed to seep through the walls. "Let me in." I felt the weight of the darkness pressing in around me again, that familiar dread wrapping around my throat. I couldn't move. I knew I wasn't alone anymore, but the question remained, what did it want? I pressed my back against the door, the whisper still echoing in my ears. "Let me in." It felt like a command and a plea all at once. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing loudly in the chilling silence. I should have felt safe behind the door, but knowing something was out there filled me with dread. I glanced around the cabin, desperate for anything that might help. The furniture loomed like shadows themselves, and every creak of the floorboards under my weight sent my nerves spiraling. The air felt dense, too thick, and I could hardly breathe. Stepping away from the door, I fumbled for the flashlight I had dropped earlier. My fingers brushed against it, and I quickly picked it up. I switched it on, casting the weak beam across the room. Those golden rays flickered against the walls, causing grotesque shapes to dance in the corners of the room. The knocking came again, now more urgent, followed by that whisper. "Open the door." I glanced toward the window. The glass was dark, reflecting my pale face and wide eyes. Shadows seemed to move outside, darting around like phantoms. I felt a chill run through me. I couldn't just ignore it, could I? What if that voice belonged to someone lost or hurt out there? But as I stared into the darkness, uncertainty gripped me. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my throat tightened. Instead, I edged toward the window and peeked outside. Nothing but the looming forest and the narrow path I had hurried down. Then something shifted in my periphery. I whipped my head back toward the door when I heard a scratching sound. Nails against wood. My breath caught. "Please, let me in," the voice repeated, softer this time. It was so close, sending shivers down my spine. "Who are you?" I called out, but I barely recognized my own voice. It sounded small, weak. Silence rushed in. Then came the sound of movement, like the figure was pacing outside, its breath mingling with the cold air. I could almost feel it, the despair. Bleeding through the door, I took a step back, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, the screen lighting up. I yanked it out, half expecting a signal or some form of salvation. Instead, it was a text message from an unknown number. "Do not let it in," it read. Fear jolted through me like electricity. But who was sending me this? Before I could even process it, the door rattled violently. It felt as if something on the other side launched itself at me. In that instant, my heart raced harder than before, pounding like a drum. I stumbled backward, almost losing my balance. Then, everything went dark. The power cut, leaving me in a crushing silence. I was plunged into a void, my flashlight flickering as it struggled against the encroaching blackness. Panic surged, and I grasped at my phone again, but I couldn't bear to touch the door. I felt the walls closing in, that whisper still echoing in my mind. I had to figure out what was happening, but I felt utterly trapped. In the suffocating darkness, I heard a soft, familiar sound, a soft, musical lullaby. My heart sank. I'd heard that melody before, but where? Just then, a swift movement caught my attention, something in the corner of the room that shouldn't have been there. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it loomed larger, and I had no idea what it could mean. I squinted into the darkness, trying to make out the shape that had suddenly appeared. My heart raced as my flashlight flickered again, the beam dimming, but still managing to catch just enough detail. It was a doll. A porcelain face with cracked cheeks, its glassy eyes staring straight at me. The black dress it wore was frayed at the edges, and wisps of hair hung limply around its shoulders. I felt a chill splay open in my chest. Why had I not seen it before? I took a tentative step back, careful not to trip, and the sound of a soft thud echoed as I bumped into a chair. It creaked ominously, but I was too fixated on the doll to care. Why was it here? Had it been left behind by previous guests? As if reading my thoughts, a whisper slithered through the air. "Take me with you." I shook my head, brows furrowing. "No," I whispered back firmly. But the lullaby continued, a haunting sequence that twisted my stomach further. The doll seemed to glimmer in my flashlight's beam, almost as if it were alive. I had to get out of this room. I couldn't stay here any longer with that thing. I stomped my foot, anger bubbling under my fear. "Stay there!" I shouted, but echoing silence blanketed my words. My phone buzzed again, breaking the tension like glass shattering. The same unknown number appeared. "You need to leave now." A chill in those words made the hairs on the back of my neck raise. Something slammed against the door, hard. I jumped, the sound like thunder in the tiny cabin. I needed an escape route, but the window felt like a trap, the forest outside looming with danger. I felt trapped in a cage built of shadow and fear. With sudden resolve, I turned back towards the door. If I was going to get out of here, I had to confront what was on the other side. I took a deep breath and placed my hand on the cold, tarnished doorknob. But a new sound stopped me. The scratching returned, frantic now, as if whatever was outside was desperate to get in. "Please, don't let me die out here," the voice whimpered, distorted as if crying through the wood. My heart sank. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" No answer came, just that pathetic whispering and the rattling of the door. I had been thrown into a web of confusion and terror, and every time I tried to make sense of it, the darkness deepened. I backed away again, feeling the doll's gaze pierce into me. "What are you?" I whispered, grasping the flashlight tighter. But before I could make any more sense of things, my phone buzzed violently once more. A final message appeared. "It's already inside." My throat went dry. Time seemed to freeze, and dread washed over me like a wave. I turned slowly, the hairs on my arms standing up. Then I heard it, a soft giggle, followed by a whisper that chilled me to the bone. "I'm here." I spun around. Someone or something was right behind me. The air felt thick with dread. I could barely think as I turned to face whatever lurked just behind me. My flashlight flickered weakly, casting inconsistent shadows that danced around the room. Was it a trick of my mind, or was I truly not alone? The giggle echoed again, closer this time. I felt my skin crawl. I was about to bolt for the door when the beam of my flashlight caught a flash of movement, an arm reaching out from the darkness, thin and delicate, almost like that of the doll. I swallowed hard, every instinct telling me to run. Instead, I took a step back and demanded, "What do you want from me?" My voice trembled, but I forced it out anyway. Silence settled, broken only by the occasional creaking of the cabin. Instinctively, I raised the flashlight higher, revealing a figure crouched beside the doll. It was a child. Her wild hair framed a dirty face, marred by smudges, but those glassy eyes mirrored the same haunting look as the doll's. "I just want to play," she murmured, her lips curling into a disconcerting smile. It made my heart race in a completely different way, more panic than curiosity. I stumbled backward, my foot hitting something on the floor. A low thud announced a shapeless object, but I couldn't focus on it. All I could see was the girl. She was too close, too wrong, and my mind raced. I needed to escape. I couldn't let her grab me with those fragile little fingers. "Stay back!" I shouted, my throat tight with fear. She only giggled again, a sound that stabbed at my sanity. Instinct took over, and I turned toward the door, fumbling to twist the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Why wouldn't it budge? I whipped around, panic surging. The girl was now standing, doll in one hand, her other hand outstretched toward me. "You can't leave. It's not safe." "Not safe?" I croaked, backing against the door, desperate to put distance between us. "From what?" With another step forward, she whispered, "They're coming." That single phrase sent a jolt of icy fear through me, grounding my frantic thoughts. "Who?" I managed to choke out, still glued to the door. It was as if the world had fallen away, the dark corners closing in. Then the scratching returned, the frantic sound from outside, but this time it felt like it surrounded the cabin. I glanced at the window and saw figures flitting in the shadows. My gut twisted. My decision had just been made for me. "Get out!" I screamed at the girl. "Get away from me!" But she only tilted her head, doll swinging from her hand. "They won't let you." No longer able to stand still, I lunged toward the window, hoping there was a chance to climb out and run into the woods, away from whatever dark power bound us in this cursed place. Just as I made it to the window, everything went pitch black. I gasped. Then silence. The kind of silence that suffocated and filled the air with dread. The only thing I knew was I had to find a way out of here, and fast. I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, drowning out all other sounds. Where had the girl gone? Had she vanished into the shadows with the lights? I found myself holding my breath, listening for any sign of life. A rustle nearby caught my attention. I strained to see through the inky blackness, but it was no use. I was trapped in this suffocating void, the cabin now more of a tomb than the refuge I initially thought it would be. I remembered the flashlight. With a trembling hand, I pressed the switch. The beam flickered back to life, illuminating the room. The girl was gone, but the doll remained, sitting where she had left it, its glassy eyes staring up at me. I frowned at its unsettling presence. I needed to focus. There had to be a way out. I moved cautiously deeper into the room, feeling the walls for anything, an exit, a window, something. My foot grazed the object I had stumbled over earlier. I bent down, squinting at it. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved and slightly weathered. I opened it, half expecting something terrifying to emerge.
Jump out at me. Inside, there were small trinkets and notes, each one more disturbing than the last. Crumpled drawings of the girl, a girl that looked eerily like the one I had seen. They were crude, but there were enough details to make them feel personal. Beneath them, a note read, "This is her home now." My stomach twisted as the implications settled in. I couldn't stay. With urgency, I turned to the door that had been so stubborn moments ago. I twisted the knob again, but still the door wouldn't budge. Panic started creeping back in. I pounded on the wood. "Let me out!" Silence answered. I stumbled back toward the window, pushing against it, but it was sealed tight, as if it had never been meant to open. I could feel the fear clawing its way back into my chest, constricting my throat. There had to be a way out. I had to find it. Then another noise broke through, different this time. It was a quiet, rhythmic tapping. I turned slowly, my eyes darting to the corners of the room, searching for the source. Just then, I spotted something, scuttling along the edge of the wall. Not the girl, but a shadowy figure. My skin prickled as I caught a fleeting glimpse of it, a dark, gaunt shape that seemed to hover just out of reach. It moved toward me, the tapping growing faster. My breath came in short gasps as I backed away, bumping into the box. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, fear coursing through me again. The tapping stopped abruptly, and the figure paused, its outline pulling back into the shadows. In that stillness, I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. Then the lights flickered again, and for just an instant I was blinded by a flash of brightness, revealing the room and a cluster of figures beyond the walls. I barely had time to gasp before the light went out again. In that moment of darkness, a thought struck me. Something had noticed me. I hadn't been alone in this cabin all along. With desperation surging anew, I lunged toward the door. I had to get out before whatever lurked in the dark decided to come for me too. My heart thundered as I slammed my shoulder against the door. It felt solid, like a prison gate. I could hear something moving in the shadows behind me, a soft whisper that sent chills down my spine. I had to keep it together. I needed a plan. Flicking the flashlight back on, I quickly scanned the room again. The doll seemed to have shifted position slightly, its gaze now directed toward the corner. I shivered. If the girl was here, if any of those figures I'd caught a glimpse of were here, I couldn't let my fear steer me. I'd learned that much. I turned back to the small wooden box. A sick curiosity compelled me to dig deeper into its contents. Rummaging the trinkets, I felt something cold and metal, a key. It was small but distinct, adorned with strange engravings that looked like they might have been made by hand. Maybe it was the key to the door. Hope surged through me, but no sooner had I imagined freedom than the specter in the corner stirred again. The shadows flickered and twined together, forming shapes that looked almost human. My breath hitched as I felt their eyes on me, filling me with an overwhelming sense of dread. "Stop!" I shouted, brandishing the flashlight like a weapon. "Get away from me!" The figures didn't flinch. Instead, they moved closer, as if responding to an unseen call. The rhythmic tapping began again, now echoing against the walls, more in sync with my racing heart. I staggered back towards the window, the key clutched tightly in my palm as if it were a lifeline. Desperation turned to urgency as I turned back to the door. I approached it once more, fumbling with the key in my trembling hands. I inserted it into the lock with a barely steady hand. Would it work? There was a click, and the door creaked open slightly. I felt a rush of cold air spill into the room, tugging at my clothes. I froze, too afraid to push it open fully. I needed to see what lay beyond before I made a move. Then I heard her voice, faint and distorted, weaving through the darkness. "You can't leave. We're all here." It was the girl. I felt my blood run cold. "What do you mean we're all here?" I croaked, panic welling again. I remembered the drawings in the box, all those faces. Did she mean the figures I had seen? I took a step back, the flashlight wavering in my grip. Then I saw it, that fleeting glimpse of shadow again, darting in and out of the light. I was not alone here. And with that realization, there was a sudden shift in the atmosphere, almost as if the walls themselves had grown tighter around me. I felt a rush of anxiety.
Please, just let me out, I yelled, my voice breaking. But the figures surged closer, the tapping crescendoing into an urgent rhythm that resonated deep within me. I felt cornered, but I couldn't turn back now. I had to escape, to find the truth behind their intent. With a roar of adrenaline, I threw the door wide open, ready to confront the unknown outside. The door swung open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit hallway lined with peeling wallpaper. The air felt different, charged, as if it held secrets that were waiting to be unleashed. I could hear the tapping sound intensify behind me, a frantic rhythm that urged me to move forward. So I stepped into the corridor, my flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. My heart raced. The shadows along the walls danced with every flicker of the light, and I kept expecting something to jump out
At me. But I pressed on, focused on finding an escape. I moved cautiously, glancing over my shoulder, wary of the figures that had dominated my nightmare. Then I noticed something odd. At the end of the hallway, a door stood slightly ajar. A faint glow emanated from within, almost inviting me in. I could feel its pull. Maybe whatever was inside held the key to understanding what was happening here. Curiosity ignited, I crept closer, each step bringing a mix of hope and trepidation. I pushed the door open with a trembling hand, its hinges creaking as if protesting my intrusion. What I found inside took my breath away. The room was filled with a haunting assortment of items, old photographs, dusty toys, and paintings that seemed to watch me as I entered. My eyes landed on a large mirror leaned against the far wall, its surface foggy and mottled. For a second, I thought I saw the outlines of the figures I had left behind, their shapes pressing against the glass as though eager to escape. I shuddered, realizing the reflections weren't just shadows. They were attempting to form shapes of who they once were. Then a flicker caught my attention, a familiar face, peering back at me from the mirror. The girl. My stomach sank. "Help us," her whispered voice echoed in my mind. "You're the only one who can." A jolt of dread shot through me. I stumbled backward, colliding with a small table that nearly toppled over. "No, I can't help you," I shouted, desperate now. My mind raced with thoughts. Was I supposed to save them? Was I trapped with these lost souls forever? Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered out, plunging me into a suffocating abyss. Panic flooded my veins, and I fumbled for the door, my heart hammering in my chest. I could feel the presence of the shadows closing in on me as I blindly stumbled backward. Suddenly, I collided with something solid. A cold hand grabbed my wrist, and I gasped, dread flooding my senses. I turned to face whatever had seized me, breath hitching in my throat. That's when I saw it, eyes gleaming in the dark. They belonged to one of the figures, the one I had seen before. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, voice raspy and low. I was trapped. My escape was slipping away, leaving me with questions that circled violently in my mind. What did they want from me, and how would I get out alive? My instincts screamed for me to run, but there was nowhere to go. I braced myself for the confrontation I had tried to avoid. "Let go of me," I yelled, adrenaline surging as I pulled away. I wrenched free from the figure's grasp, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Without thinking, I lunged back toward the door, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness and its cold, dead gaze. I opened the door again and darted into the hallway. The glow that beckoned me earlier now seemed distant and non-existent. As I sprinted, the hurried sounds of footsteps echoed behind me. They weren't mine. They sounded heavier, more deliberate. A sense of urgency propelled my legs, pushing me to run faster, harder, as the shadows loomed, undulating around me. I turned a corner, and there it was, the front door, wide open and glistening with moonlight. I could see the snow outside, untouched except for my own footprints. Freedom was just steps away. I grasped the doorframe, but dread clawed into my mind. What waited for me outside? Was it worse than whatever was racing behind me?
"Stay with us!" echoed behind me, the voice a cacophony of despair. The words gripped me tightly, but I pushed them aside. I had to escape. I wouldn't stay here another moment. With all my strength, I burst through the door, the chill of the night air hitting me like a wave. I sprinted across the porch, flinging myself into the yard, and didn't look back. My breath came out in frantic bursts as I fled down the path, branches snapping and curling around me like claws reaching out from the shadows. It felt like they were trying to pull me back, deeper into the woods. When I reached my car, half buried in the snow and darkness, I nearly collapsed against it. I fumbled with the keys as panic blanketed my mind. I could almost hear the urgency in the air. Something was watching, waiting. The night felt alive with the chills of the figures still lurking just beyond the edge of the trees, and the whispers grew louder, mocking me. Finally, the engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into gear, plunging down the narrow road. My hands shook against the wheel, and I fought to focus on the winding path ahead. The cabin faded into the background, but the suffocating unease tightened its grip on my chest. I pressed the gas pedal harder, desperate to put distance between me and that haunted place. But as I drove, the questions swirled violently in my mind. What had I witnessed? Who were the figures, and what did they mean by wanting me to stay? Were they trapped, just as I had felt? The girl's words rang painfully clear. "You're the only one who can." What had she meant? Days passed since that night, yet not a moment spent away from that cursed cabin felt any lighter. Conversations with others became awkward, my thoughts rarely straying far from the forest's edges. I didn't dare return, but the specters of loss seemed to follow me even in daylight. In my dreams, I saw the girl with haunted eyes, always asking me the same thing. Why didn't you help us? There were no answers, just a gnawing confusion that settled into my bones. And as I lay in bed each night, the whispers returned, soft
and sorrowful, drifting on the wind. "Let us in." I moved away soon after, to a city alive with noise and light, but I took with me a heavy heart and lingering disquiet. Something had called to me in that woods, something that still haunted my reflections in quiet moments. I still think about it sometimes, that little girl and the shadows. If those ragged souls still wove through that cursed cabin, waiting for someone who could understand. I never found peace in the change of my surroundings, and maybe something in me sensed that I could never truly escape.